Hey, everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. You're listening to PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. Joining me, as always, is Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter. It is Charlie O'Connor. What's going on today, Chuck?
I am so happy it's not 100 degrees today. So happy.
I have this little Xfinity thing in my kitchen that my security system's connected to, but I really just use it to know what the weather is.
Right.
Go out, take a shower, I go out in my kitchen. 77 feels like 77. I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. Listen, I am never one to complain about the weather because it's the fucking weather. There ain't a goddamn thing you can do about it. But 2 straight weeks of 104 feels like is insane.
It's rough.
That is an insane period of time to go through.
I will say it's wild that I went to Las Vegas where the temperatures were in the hundreds every single day, came home and there was basically no relief. It was it felt the same because while Vegas was hotter, it's not as humid. This was a bit cooler, but significantly more humid. So in terms of sheer discomfort, it was pretty much the same.
I always think the dry heat thing is bullshit. But when it's the same temperature and humid, it's It's not. It's it's a dry heat. Yeah, so's my oven.
Yeah.
When it's 400 degrees, it sucks.
The thing with the dry heat deal is that it definitely does feel different without the humidity. It doesn't have the same feeling of you're getting pressed down into the pavement like it does when it's humid, but it doesn't change the fact that if you're out there for more than 5-10 minutes, you're going to be drenched in sweat and it's unbelievably, unbearably hot. That doesn't change. It's just a different kind of pain.
This has been the weather with Charlie and Bill.
Hey,
now we have sports on the 2s. It is 2 after, so we can get to that. But no, it's, as we've been talking about, it's rank week. And as the different Flyers games have come out from the overall Philadelphia top 25 list, we've talked about them briefly. But of course, the way we did this, the top 25 list was compiled by each beat makes a top 10 list.
Right.
Since 1980, the best games. And then the list was parsed down from there. The 4 sports. Sorry, Union, you haven't been around long enough to have any games on this list. But they're pretty old at this point now, aren't they?
They've been around for quite a while.
Yeah, but still, it's soccer. So the top 4 teams.
Don't let some of our co-hosts at PHLY say that.
Listen, to each their own. If they feel like making fun of professional wrestling, they can go right ahead.
I mean, I do.
I don't know.
I do often.
I don't know if it's a joke or not, but I'm pretty sure I saw that Hulk Hogan is going to be speaking at the RNC. And I mean, that's pro wrestling.
That's pro wrestling.
Listen, I get it.
I think I will not. I'm not saying this to slander other sports, but especially in Philadelphia, there is the Big Four. There is. It's just undeniable. And I know,
and honestly,
I know the Union have a big following, and that's great.
Teetering.
But the hard truth is that MLS is not one of the top leagues in the world, whereas the NHL is the best hockey league in the world. MLS does not have a case to be considered to be a tier 1 league in the same way that the Prem is, in the same way that Spanish league is. It just doesn't. And that's just a fact. And Union fans have to at least acknowledge that.
When your league is set up as a parody, and by that I mean half the teams we're Real Salt Lake. No, there's nothing royal about you. You're in fucking Utah.
That's a really good point.
No, I'm sorry that you stole your name from some other club that is a real club. But a 14-year-old played for the Union last night. Wow, awesome.
DC United, baby.
Wow, awesome. That kid couldn't get a job at Pizza Hut. It would be illegal.
Yeah, as a former Pizza Hut employee,
Yeah, I got hired at 16, and then they stopped hiring 16 and 17-year-olds because they had to give them breaks. So they're like, no, we're just only going to hire 18-year-olds. We're not. Well, you get a half hour off? Absolutely not.
Oh, man.
Anyway, so rank week. I don't even know how we got here.
Do we ever?
If you haven't realized it's mid-July, the first 5 minutes of the show should be a dead giveaway. But yeah, so it's rank week, and we parse down the list. But I just figured, there's been 3 games announced so far for the Flyers on the top 25 list. There's, I assume, 1 left, hasn't gotten to. Spoiler, it's going to be in the top 2 on this list.
Yeah.
So why not just go through our top 10 here and kind of see where we end up, see where people disagree. Like we have some honorable mentions I want to get to at the end, and then just some times that I'm like, man, we really should have something from some of this. And it's like, well, it's a top 10 list. Can't appease everybody. But let's start with number 10 from mine and Charlie's list. The 2019 Stadium Series game against the Penguins at Lincoln Financial Field. That comes in at number 10. The Flyers win it in overtime. Captain Claude Giroux scores the winner. They trailed 3-1 with 3 minutes left. JVR and Jake Voracek score the goals to push it to overtime. And then Claude Giroux comes through with one of his maybe final great memories, like game 1000, his last game.
Yeah, the last game would have been the final.
That was an amazing.
Yeah.
But like
that was an event.
Yeah,
that was an event.
That whole game
was a send off. But this was an actual thing he did.
This was like almost the exact same shot as the 2012 game that I'm sure we'll get to in a little bit when Peter Laviolette dubbed him the best player in the world, which. Honestly, ruined his legacy here for the next 10 years. But no, this game, I'll always remember this game fondly because, one, I've been to all the Flyers outdoor games. This is the only one they ever won. And two, late in the third period, I'm looking at Ava. We're in the she secured tickets in the NovaCare box for us.
It was a miserable day.
It was a miserable day. We were inside, which was nice.
Yeah.
We were in the NovaCare box. But I'm like, it's going to be a fucking madhouse getting out of here. Like, it's the link. It's sold out.
Yeah.
Getting an Uber or whatever, it's going to be a real pain in the ass. You think maybe we want to bail? And she holds that against me to this day.
I mean,
like, you wanted to leave.
She should.
You wanted to leave. It's not over yet. And then they, like, immediately came back, and then an amazing ending. And, like, I hate leaving early. Just don't believe in it. And that day I was like, it sucks out here. It's going to be a shit show leaving. Let's just go. And she's like, absolutely not. Like, we cannot leave.
Yeah.
And thank God, because there's not a ton of recent shit on this list, Charlie.
And the one thing about that game and the way the Flyers tied it, that needs, because that's why I'm talking about how the weather was really bad.
Yeah.
The Flyers don't make that comeback if the weather isn't terrible, because the goals they score, particularly the Jake Voracek game tying goal, like, they were unbelievably weak, and it was because the ice surface was so bad because it was raining the whole time. Like, the goalies' pads were waterlogged by that point because it had been raining pretty much the whole game. So the Flyers probably lose that game if it's played indoors. If it's played in a normal atmosphere, they lose that game and never gets to overtime. But because it's an outdoor game, it does. And it gets to overtime, which gives Claude Giroux the opportunity for the heroics. And I mean, look, I covered the team that year. That was a miserable season.
That was not a fun season.
That was the 2018, 2019 season. That was the year that Hack and Hex both get canned.
Well, not everything was terrible.
So not everything. But anyway, they both get canned. The season's a disaster. Because if you remember, the reason why Hextall gets canned, well, not the reason, but the
excuse for it
was they get utterly decimated 2 times, I believe, in 4 nights, ending with a game in Toronto where they just got obliterated. And then that Monday is when they fire Hextall. Then obviously Fletcher gets brought in, Hack gets fired because
he was his own interim.
He kind of got forced into it.
Yeah.
But I think Hack was on the way out at some point.
Well, that was the whole thing.
It got expedited.
Yeah.
My point is, though, is that this is a miserable year. This is the year of 9 goalies, 10 goalies, however many goalies they had. It was a bad year. But this was the one good thing that happened in that year. There was a cool game at the Link. The Flyers did a good job of presenting it. I very vividly remember the gritty antics. Gritty streaking. That was very funny. And then the underlying story, which you have up here, was the fact that going into the game, it was abundantly clear that Wayne Simmons was on the way out.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget covering that game because the availability, most of the availability was in the locker room. And we go in after the game, and you could just see everyone on the team like going over to shake Wayne's hand, to pat him on the head, to just kind of thank him for everything he had done before we even got access to Simmons. That was still going on, and this was after, and I believe they eventually released the video. It was after Jake Voracek had a really nice end of game locker room speech,
Yeah.
you know, saying how much Wayne Simmons meant to him as a teammate and as a friend. And it just added another layer to this game beyond the Giroux dramatic game winner, which was already pretty freaking cool that he did it outdoors against the Penguins. And it's the farewell to, you know, one of the key players of the era and an ultimate fan favorite Flyer in Wayne Simmons.
Yeah, it was really cool. One lasting memory I have from that, obviously the Giroux winning it in overtime, all that stuff, the weather. I have one lasting memory, and it's Shane Gostisbehere laying a brutal fucking hit in the neutral zone on Chris Letang. Like, laid him out. And, like, it's Shane Gostisbehere. Not exactly his game. And I'm like, okay, all right. At least we got something out of this. We got a pound of flesh.
There were
from
a
the
lot of
Penguins.
cool things about that game.
Yeah.
You had Ghost throwing hits. I think even Nolan Patrick threw a hit, if I remember correctly, like a big one, which is very unlike him. You had the Travis Konechny mic'd up where he spent the entire game chirping.
Just saying a bunch of shit that doesn't make sense.
Or was like his ear cuffs?
The ear cuffs thing. And he was like, "Oh, I was bored at night, but it wasn't last night." Like that has no meaning in this context.
And then I think my favorite part of that mic'd up video is, I think it's Jake Gensel goes back to me, shut up.
Like, just annoying the shit out of them. It was so great. But yeah, so that comes in at number 10 on our list. We go to number 9, and it is another regular season game. This one of considerably more consequence. Final game of the season in 2010 comes down to a shootout. Just the way we all drew it up. Brian Boucher versus Henrik Lundqvist. And obviously Brian Boucher came away with that one. What a freaking, like, winner-take-all game. Comes down to, historically, the thing the Flyers have struggled with most since the lockout. Oh, yeah, shootout against the best goalie ever. Yeah, this is probably going to go well. It did.
Yeah.
And it did.
And it kicked off like a 2-month stretch, month and a half stretch where everything that could go right for the Flyers went right.
All of a sudden, things start going right for the, like, you know, and that season, another one where going back to December, they fire the coach.
Right.
John Stevens. It's like, he might just be too close with some of these players. Yeah. And they weren't terrible, but they definitely weren't dominating the way the team was put together. I'll never forget,
I went to the game right before Stevens got fired. It was a game against the Canucks, and they play like crap because my buddy in college at the time was from British Columbia. So we're like, okay, we're going to this game. And the Flyers are listless. They just were completely irrelevant in that game. And I remember walking out of the stadium with him, walking back to the subway station and being like, that's the kind of game that gets coach fired. And then, like, next day, coach gets fired.
Lavi comes in. They struggle a little bit right away as he changes systems, and then things just take off. Michael Layton joins the team at some point, and it really just kicks off the best run of our lifetime.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's no other way to put it. And the guys who score, Briere and Giroux, you have Boucher as a hero, and it's his, I think this is only his second stint at this point. Then he had a third one later on.
I would equate this run as a Philly fan. This run was very similar in retrospect to the Phillies' run to the World Series when they lost to the Astros, where, you know, this was a team that, you know, didn't necessarily have the full trust of the fan base, and then over a 1 to 2 month span turned into such a popular team that everyone in the city got behind. Because if you remember that Phillies run, like, I remember that first series, the whole thing was like, the final 2 months of the year was they're not going to make the playoffs. They never make the playoffs. They always choke. And then they get in the first series, like, they're not going to win a game. And they're about to get blown out in that game 1, and they come back and win it. And then it was just off to the friggin' races.
Charlie, I was hosting like WIP shows in mid-September. Yeah. Getting calls like, they might make it and they don't even deserve to.
Exactly.
I don't even want them
and
to.
those are the kind of conversations that were around the Flyers. Where, well, they might make the playoffs, but this team sucks.
They're a 7 seed.
Underachievers. Yeah. You know, Richards is a bad captain. Pronger isn't even that good. Like, this was the narrative. And then in a month and a half, 2 months, it all gets flipped on his head. And that never happens if the Flyers don't beat Lundqvist twice in the shootout.
It's crazy. Like, it's crazy, the narrative. As we go through this list, there's going to be a few more, but, like, the narrative around Claude Giroux and, like, how many times he's going to pop up in terms of clutch moments. Like, yes, he did in the second part of his career have some disappointing playoffs, but goddamn, he came through so freaking often.
Yep.
Like we have one of the honorable mentions on here is that. Oh no, the game did make it, so we're gonna get to it when we get to that. But let's go to number 8 now, and this is one 2004 Game 6 against Toronto. The JR and Jeremy, I'm saying both at the same time. Jeremy Roenick overtime goal that basically ended the Leafs franchise.
Yeah, they've never recovered.
They've really never recovered.
They have
from
won a
this one.
series now,
Yeah.
so we can't say that anymore. That was really fun
But
for a long time.
Did it go 6?
What's that?
Did it go 6? Did it only go 5?
What? Which series?
The Toronto making it to the second round again.
Oh, I don't remember.
I don't remember either. But just like, have they made it to a game 6 in the second round yet? Because if not, they still haven't gotten this far yet.
It's fair.
But this is, Roenick scores the winner in overtime, and the lasting memory of this game is the Darcy Tucker hit.
Oh, yes.
Like,
the
that's the
Sammy
one.
Kapanen play is what everyone remembers. We were talking about this one before we went on air today.
Yeah.
And I basically said that, the reason why I can't put this one much higher is because and granted, I wasn't that old, but I wasn't that young either. Like, I was a teenager. I should remember this entire game. I don't remember much about this game aside from the end. Like, the final 2-3 minutes were bonkers, and that Darcy Tucker hit on Sammy Kapanen and him trying desperately to get back to the bench, falling multiple times, essentially getting dragged over to the bench by his teammates. But because of that, it keeps the play going. And if there's a stoppage, butterfly effect, who the hell knows what happens? The play keeps going, and ultimately Roenick scores the game winner. And it's just that element of, that was what was so great about that team. And why that team, even though they lost, they didn't get to the cup final. They lose in 7. They were out of guys, and they were just giving everything they had.
Everyone was hurt.
Everything.
They had no defensemen. Like, when you talk about butterfly effect, if they hadn't traded Chris Therien that year, I just wonder. Because they ran out of defensemen. Sammy Kapanen had to line up at defense sometimes, and then he gets knocked the fuck out in this game. And what so many weird things. But 2010 and 04, probably the 2 years we're going to talk about most on these couple of lists. But what I just I don't remember a lot from this game specifically, but we talked about the 03 series these two teams played against each other a little yesterday, and I have in here just looking at the way that series played out, there probably should be something.
Right.
It's an insane freaking series. Flyers lose game 1 5-3, win game 2 4-1, then lose game 3 in double overtime. Game 4 goes triple overtime. Flyers win. Game 5, Flyers win. Now they're up 3-2. Game 6, Toronto wins in double overtime. And then in a back-to-back, that was April 21st. On April 22nd, Flyers win Game 7, 6-1. I remember that series, and then this following year, this series, both just being so incredibly violent. That Darcy Tucker hit, that's the 10 out of 10 hit.
Yeah.
But there were 100 nines between these two series. They were just so wildly violent. And then the Flyers end up winning this one, and it ends with JR picking the corner on the break. And hell yeah, that was some really good stuff. Before we get into the rest of the list, let's take a quick second to talk about the BetParx Sportsbook app. That's right. BetParx has your seat at the table with a live dealer for all your favorite classic casino games right on your phone and right now. You can play live baccarat, live roulette, live blackjack, and all with a live dealer. Plus, you can play hundreds of exciting slots all online right from your phone. I'm proud to exclusively recommend BetParx. It's the only online casino and sports betting app I use myself. Summer's here, so if you're at the beach, on the boat, the boardwalk, the Poconos, the campground, the lake, or your backyard pool, make your downtime fun time. Plus, BetParx is a proud official betting operator of the PGA Tour. I know you all like to get your parlays out there for the PGA. You can do it right here with the BetParx app. The BetParx app has lots of ways to bet to bet PGA golf, bet players, bet matches, top finishers, and more. Live bet while you watch. You can also obviously get in. Philadelphia baseball, soccer, you can get in on women's tennis, much more. Anything you want to bet on, you want to get some action going, you do it with the BetParx app. Download the BetParx app and enjoy all the action and excitement from the casino right at your fingertips. Odds, bets, slots, and games right in your pocket. And a great offer for new users. New users, download the BetParx app. Download the BetParx online casino and sportsbook app right now and get up to $1,000 casino bonus back if you're down in the first 24 hours. Casino bonus must be wagers. BetParx.com for details. You must be 21 in PA, New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio, or Michigan. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. You love to play. You play to win. You bet. BetParx. And while we're here, listen, if you want to maybe fund all this gambling, you probably need a job. Well, you can do that with Indeed. But right today, we're going to talk about hiring with Indeed. Listen, we're all driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search. It's to match. And you got to match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. You can ditch the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites. How do they do it? By leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day. Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preference, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. All listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/AllCity. Just go to Indeed.com/AllCity right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/AllCity. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, where do we leave off? Oh, with Toronto. So we're going to stay in 2004 here, Charlie.
This is a game. I'm surprised you didn't push to be number one.
In case you're
this
wondering,
is your game.
In case you're wondering who wrote the list, coming in at number 7, the 2004 brawl against Marty Havlat's Senators. Just an absolutely incredible night. 419 penalty minutes. I love my notes here. They're 1 minute.
Marty Havlat hit in the penalty box.
That
is the note for those that are just listening, not watching.
Yes. Right. It's a podcast too. Yeah, so he just hit in the penalty box. He started the whole thing a couple of games prior when he slashed Mark Recchi in the face. Flyers wanted their retribution.
Well, they got it.
He was like, nah.
Not to him, but they probably say on the whole.
I'm just going to run and hide and let all of my teammates take these beatings for me.
Yep.
Just 419 penalty minutes. Imagine coming up 1 minute shy. Like, of it just being absolutely freaking perfect. But it just, I guess one of those, I remember watching this. I was at, it was a Friday night. And every Friday night when I was in middle school, we went to, I guess this would have been freshman year of high school. Yeah, freshman year of high school. We went to Hollydale for open skates, just where we all hung out. And this game is on one of the monitors in the snack stand. I just look up. I'm like, is John LeClaire fighting right now? What the fuck is going on? And they immediately are like, we are going to replay this game. And I went home, popped in the VHS, still have it, and taped this game. I was like, I have to see what went on. And it was absolute freaking madness. All starts with Donald Brashear and Rob Ray, and then just really pops off from there. Well, really, Ray started a fight with somebody else when Brashear was on the ice because he knew he could get Brashear kicked out by doing that. Brashear jumps in. Brashear then gets jumped. It's a whole thing. They're like, oh, we got rid of him. Problem's over. No, the whole rest of the Flyers fought, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting game. Number one, because obviously it's just
it didn't happen
it's
anymore.
Iconic.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting game in terms of where certain individuals would rank it, because it's not like this game is memorable for hockey. There's nothing particularly memorable about this game from a hockey standpoint. They won.
I will say the Senators.
My point here is basically that like look, if you are someone who doesn't find fighting terribly interesting, this game is a circus sideshow. If you're someone who finds that to be one of the most entertaining parts of hockey, you could argue this should be like number 3.
If there weren't a bunch of really good playoff games coming up, I probably would rank it higher. But I just think like this is what hockey is. No matter how much you want to change it and how much it evolves, it is a sport played. There are a few stoppages. Like it is played on raw emotion. Like you can get physical and angry in football, and then you have 2 fucking minutes to go calm down. And they rotate play. Like in hockey, you get mad, and then you're still standing next to the guy you're mad at, and there ain't no whistle. Like, and this is just kind of one of those, like, I just remember, I think it was John Clark. I want to say it was John Clark who was, like, reporting from the sidelines at that point. And just like, yeah, it's a real just weird feel down here. Guys just shaking hands, high-five in the locker room, like, coming, like, it just feels old school down here. Like, it's just so different. It's such a throwback. And, yeah,
this was a bullies game.
It was a bullies game.
It was a bullies game.
It was. I mean, it feels as if they were told you had to go do this. Like you have to go get your retribution. I don't think so, though.
I think what made it cool for me as a fan was that it did feel spontaneous. It did not feel like this, like, because I've said this on multiple occasions. I enjoy fighting, but I enjoy the fights that feel like they're organic. Like I roll my eyes. My eyes literally roll into the back of my head every time I see the like start of game. We decide in warm-ups we're going to fight shit. Like, okay, now you're literally just a sideshow. This is not hockey. This is not meant to do anything other than like, well, we're the only reason why both of us are on the roster is because we fight. So let's fight so we can keep our jobs. Like that makes me roll my eyes like crazy because I don't particularly care for the fights in and of themselves. But what I like is when a fight happens organically due to what happened in the game. And that to me was this. And I think there was also an element too, and some of the guys have actually talked about this in the years after this, that like no one wanted to be the players who were still on the bench. Like it was like, you can't be that guy. You got to get in your scrap too.
I just remember like the puck dropping at one point in the third period and all hell doesn't break loose and the fans just start booing. Yeah, it's so good. Like they have to finish the game.
Yeah, like there is a game that does have to get finished.
Someone has to finish this game at some point. And they like Sean Burke finished the game in net because Esh fought. Like it was right. It was absolute.
Esh fought Lalim, right?
Yeah, it was absolute. Thank God it wasn't Ray Emery. Who was Biron fought Emery once?
Yeah, that sounds right. I mean, Emery was a tough motherfucker.
Yeah, he was a good. His job, like he was an enforcer who was like, I'll stop the pucks in between fights.
Yeah.
Like he was insane.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I just love this game so much. And I will say, while yeah, it wasn't like this isn't the Penguins or anything. I will always hate the Senators for this game. The 2 years prior where they lose in the playoffs and it's a fucking embarrassment both times to the Senators. Like that's a part of this story too.
Well, yeah, there's a reson why the Senators are your most hated team.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
it all stems from that.
They lost in 5 and I think only scored 3 goals the one year. Like it was an absolute freaking like Roman Czechmanek just left the ice in the middle of one of those games. Like it was bad, and the Senators were kind of their foil for a while, and they got him back.
Exercised some demons in this one, to be sure.
All right, and now we go from 2004, just a straight up brawl, to number 6 on this list, Stanley Cup Final Game 3, 2010. Claude Giroux wins it in overtime. They're down 2-0 in the series. They're coming home. Not the biggest deal in the world to be down 2-0. We did just, a month earlier see them come back from 3-0, but not ideal. And now you're back home. People are jazzed up. First Stanley Cup final game in Philly since 1997. You want to send the people home happy, and they did. They did.
Yeah, I mean, this game, obviously, it would be even higher had they won the cup.
Then it's like number 2 behind the game where they win it.
Yeah, this is the turning point game where, they lose, they're down 3-0, series is probably over. I know they came back against Boston. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But let's be clear, those Blackhawks teams were much better than that Boston team. I mean, that Blackhawks team was absolutely loaded.
They won 3 cups.
If they lose game 3, it's over. And they were right with them. Really, in the first 2 games of that series, they were right with them. So you felt like they weren't out of it. It's just they had to get a friggin' win.
They had to get a stop.
They had,
They lose 6-5 in game 1. Like, I love again, like going back to early Claude Giroux here. 3-point night, primary assist on the game tying goal, scores the winner. This guy had legend written all over him, and they just couldn't put a team around him.
Yeah. And I remember getting into so many arguments with people on Twitter throughout the back half of the 2010s when people would make the case that Claude Giroux isn't clutch. And it's like, you do realize there are few things more clutch than scoring an overtime winner in the cup final. You can't with a straight face claim a guy isn't clutch when he scored in the most clutch situation that can exist in hockey. It was insanity.
Like, that's it. I guess a series clinching goal, which unfortunately we saw a little later.
Yeah.
But like, I was one of the people who criticized Giroux for his later career playoff failings, but like, there ain't no way you can criticize the first part and like, all that's part of it.
Yeah.
It's not as if that gets erased. Like, he still did those things.
Yeah, this for me is higher than 6.
Really?
This is one of my favorite games of my time as a Flyers fan. And I mean, part of it obviously was that, it's the cup final, number one. They finally get a cup final win. It was the first one. Truly, this is actually true. It was the first cup final win of my lifetime because they obviously got swept in 97, so they didn't win a game in that cup final.
I didn't even think of that.
First cup final win of my lifetime. Claude Giroux was, by then, my favorite player on the team. And I mean, I'm not going to go into details, but like, I was going through some personal shit at the time that was really tough. And it was just like something good happened. And it's one of those games that just means a lot to me. I was watching with my college friends. I was in college in my apartment at the time. It was probably about like 10 of us watching. And, you're so tense because if they lose that game, it's over. I mean, not over, but come on. There's no way they're winning. And suddenly
they're going to do it twice.
They win the game and you're like, yeah, they could do this. And then obviously they win game 4. And then suddenly you're like, man, they really could do this.
And of course they didn't. And that's why this is, the last game from this series on the list. But I want to know, so you would personally put this one higher than 6.
Yeah, I think so.
Would you put it over this next one that I have at 5, 2012 game 6 against the Pittsburgh Penguins? Giroux's big hit against Crosby, the goal, wins the series. We could have probably put like 3 games from this series on this list, honestly. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to go with the clincher because it puts the series away.
It was an iconic moment, to be sure. And obviously they win the series. Yeah.
I have this ahead of the Stanley Cup final goal simply because they win the series.
Fair.
Like, yeah, if they win the Stanley Cup in 2010, game 3 might be number 2 on the list. But the fact that they win this series, it's Crosby who had been this foil for the Flyers for so long, like 2008, 2009, beats them. He's the next one. And then Giroux is up to the task. At least on this one day, he was, while Peter Laviolette was being hyperbolic when he called Claude Giroux the best player in the world. In this series, on this day, he was better than Sidney Crosby.
He was the better player in that series. He was. Like, Sidney Crosby's obviously the better player.
Yes.
Undeniably so.
Without a doubt.
In this series, Claude Giroux was better. And in that final game, he absolutely was better. And the fact that he announces his presence in that game by knocking Crosby. Like, it could have been anybody, but it was freaking Crosby. He knocks him on his ass. And then, seconds later, he scores the opening goal. It was the defining Claude Giroux moment of his time. It kind of sucks that like this was the peak. And
game 6 in the first round.
Not that he didn't have other great moments.
Yeah.
Like I think back to the hat trick he scored in the final game of the 2018 regular season to clinch the playoff berth. Like he had other great moments. We talked about one a few minutes ago in that Stadium Series game. But this was the pinnacle. Like this was the moment where not only was it his best moment, it was also the moment where you're like, anything's possible with this guy. in retrospect, yes, the Laviolette comment is stupid and hyperbole and probably negatively impacted the way some fans viewed him. But the reason why it did was because at that moment, it seemed possible that Giroux could potentially be that tier 1 superstar in the vein of a Crosby, of an Ovechkin. I mean, I remember, I think it was TSN that at the end of that season did their like rankings of the best players, and Giroux was at the very least top 10, if not top 5. He was right there. He at the end of that regular season, he ranked near the top of the scoring charts. He then outduels Crosby in the playoffs. Yeah, they lose in the second round, but at that moment, for that like couple-month period, Claude Giroux was universally accepted in the hockey world as one of the 5 or 6 best players, I would say, in hockey. Obviously, it turned out that he wasn't quite that good, but there's a reason why at the time it didn't seem insane to posit that that might be the direction that Giroux's career was going, because to that point, he had just kept trending upwards.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't know where it was going to stop. It turned out that's where it stopped. That was his best. But at the time, we didn't know that.
Would you say he was better here than in 2018?
Good question. I personally would say yes.
Me too.
Because number one, the league was lower scoring this year. So point totals were deflated all around. So scoring 90 in this season
93,
was probably more impressive than scoring 100 in 2018. Number two, at this point, Giroux was still a center. He wasn't a wing, and he didn't have the benefit of playing next to a Selke guy and Sean Couturier like he did in 2018.
Coots wasn't Coots yet. He's a rookie.
Yeah.
Jake wasn't Jake yet.
Yeah.
Like, it's him, Hartnell, and Yager on the top line. Like, it's not Jake yet. This is probably it. And it's a shame it went the way it went after this, just with the team as a whole. Because, it was a moment where we'd had some great teams since then. But we hadn't had one of those guys since Lindros. Yeah, we had Forsberg, but it wasn't Conn Smythe Forsberg.
And he wasn't prime Forsberg
it wasn't
anymore.
That Forsberg. Like, the Richards Carter teams before that, it was like, we are just the deepest team. Like, we have Richards, Carter, Briere down the middle. Yeah. Good luck. Yeah. And then look at our blue line. This was the Claude Giroux show.
Yeah.
And then he beat Crosby. You go, okay, we have one of these guys.
Yeah.
We didn't. But on that day, we did.
On that day, we did. So
would you put Game 3 of the Cup final ahead of this?
So personally, I would, and my reason is this. This game had the more iconic moment, but it was a blowout. That game was a better game, a better start-to-finish game. Like, let me put it this way. I would have not much interest in rewatching this entire game. I would rewatch the first period, whereas I would happily rewatch the entirety of Game 3 because that was just a great hockey game. So that would be why I would put that ahead.
Okay. I feel you. I can see that being a point of contention. I'm just going to go with they won the game, they won the series, and I felt real good.
It's fair.
Let's hit number 4. Number 4, a game we talked about yesterday, the 5 overtime game.
Yeah.
And I am in an argument with Gargano right now over this versus what's going to come up next.
Okay.
In terms of where you would rank them. And we had this conversation yesterday because this is like the 5 overtime game. To me, it's like a bigger deal hockey-wide than it is to a Flyers fan.
I think that's fair. It's a really big deal for Flyers fans, but I feel like for Flyers fans, it's more... I mean, yes, there was the uniqueness of it, but I feel like it's more a point of pride. It's like, that was our team. We won the crazy 5 overtime game. Like, it was more of a, we survived it rather than like, does anyone really sit down and rewatch? What was it?
That's what
9 period or what? So what would it be? 8 periods of hockey.
No, that's what I was just saying. I was yelling at Gargano about this before you got here, or maybe it was while you were here, Charlie. I was like, yes, it's incredible, and it was a war of attrition. It's 5 overtime games. The stories of guys being hurt and sitting on the bench and being like, maybe I can give you a shift, but like my leg's broken and shit, and like having to order pizzas and there not being any food because it's 3 a.m. Like, that's all crazy. you gonna sit down and watch this game and tell me like overtime number 3 was a great fucking period?
hockey.
Like you get to, like
They're exhausted.
It's a bunch of like. Also, this is 2000 when everyone is also 240 pounds still.
This is trappier hockey still.
It's like, you're gonna tell me this was like the height of hockey right here? Like I haven't watched it in a long time, and maybe I'm gonna go home tonight because I'm gonna be on Gargano tomorrow, and we're gonna have this argument. Maybe I'm gonna go home tonight and watch 192 minutes of hockey just to see. But if I had to guess, I would say the 4th overtime period, not all that.
You know
compelling.
what I would say the only way I would ever consider rewatching the entirety of the game is if like I was hanging out with them, and like I'm at the age now where this doesn't happen anymore. But like if I'm hanging out with a bunch of my buddies and we turn into a drinking game, like down somebody's basement, it's like, okay, like every time JJ says this, we drink. Every time there's like a shot on goal, like that would be the only way I could see myself wanting to watch this in its entirety.
I'm thinking like, I always have those thoughts, like we should do that. And then I'm like, Bill, I have kids. Leave me alone. I bet I could
Wait, you have kids?
No.
I was like, wait, did you not tell me something?
No. My friends all just being like, Bill,
your friends have kids.
Bill,
okay.
no. I got to be up in the morning.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I got work.
Kids. We can't go till 5.
Yeah.
Like, all right. But maybe we can, August is a long month, Charlie.
This is fair.
Maybe we figure out a way to do this, but we'll see. And then obviously at number 3, I think just the
one thing before we go, the one thing I do want to note about the 5 overtime game, and this is the one part about it that I do think is really cool. Usually in these games, it ends with a garbage goal. I think it's really cool that Primo ended this game with maybe not quite a highlight reel goal, but a really cool hockey goal. I think that's cool.
Cut in at the circle, right at the dot, rip a wrist shot. Like that's a nice goal.
It was not a fluke goal. It was he beat him clean with a great friggin' shot.
Even that Giroux Stanley Cup final goal, like that's not a beautiful dangle goal that you might associate with Claude Giroux. Like it's a high slot deflection basically.
Yeah.
I think it's part of the call that we didn't get to yet. Like I just wanted to play the part of the call yesterday that was like the much maligned. Yeah. But they're talking like as they're showing the replay, like we said this is probably going to be like a dirty goal, an ugly goal, but it wasn't. This was pretty damn nice.
This is a really nice goal.
That's definitely worth mentioning. I was trying to vamp there so I could bring up the box score because I think the Flyers were like heavily outshot in this game.
Were they?
Come on, hockey reference.
It's
Work
possible.
With
I mean, Boucher. We have in the notes here. If you're not watching on YouTube, Boucher stopped 57 of 58 shots. And another thing that is worth pointing out,
stopped 70 of 72.
Okay, so the Flyers outshot them dramatically.
I had that wrong.
But it's worth noting because this gets lost in the legend of this game. How big of a game this was. Like the Flyers are the heavy favorites going into this series. Obviously, they dealt in this season with the drama of the Lindros situation, so you could argue that they were a bit of a team in turmoil, but the Penguins were the 7 seed. The Flyers were the 1 seed. Like, Flyers were the heavy favorites, and they lose both games to start the series at home. They completely squander home ice advantage. Yeah, they win game 3 in overtime, like basically saving the series on the road, but if they lose this game, and then especially the longer it goes, like I think by the time you reach like the 3rd overtime, there's a feeling of if whoever loses this game has no chance of winning the series. Like it's over. And it was already going to be a difficult way back had they lost game 4 and went down 3-1. Like, yeah, they would have been going back home for game 5, so maybe they turn it, but they did lose both games at home to start the series, so you never know. But 3-1's a pretty tough hill to climb. If it's 3-1 after losing in 5 overtimes, it's over.
Yeah. No, it's like when you played, it doesn't happen anymore, but when you play those 19-inning baseball games, it's like, well, both teams are fucked tomorrow, so you really want to win tonight.
Yeah.
Like we have no bullpen.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I always remember about this is game 3 also went to overtime.
Yeah.
Now, Andy Delmore scores at 11:01, so they played half a period. But like
extra hockey.
Yeah, they played a ton of hockey in these couple of days. That's
sure did.
Absolutely freaking insane. And now we get to you know what? Before we do that,
before we get to the big 3,
let's take a second to tell you about a sponsor I am pumped to talk to you about. I told Bryn earlier. I was like, honestly, I don't even have copy for this. I'm just really, really excited to tell you about our friends over at Primo's Hoagies, one of our newest sponsors here. Now, like, listen, I have a personal relationship with the family that started Primo's Hoagies. Like, they sponsored my baseball teams and shit growing up. I went to high school with a lot of their kids, but I am just a huge fan of Primo's Hoagies. Around this time every day, my wife texts me like, oh, what do you want to do for lunch? Should we make something? Like, she'll maybe be home when I get home after the show. She's like, do you want me to pick something up? I was like, well, honestly, Abe, I have Primo's read today, so I'm looking at their menu, and I can't think of anything else. No matter what kind of sandwich you're into, man, they have something for you. Big fan of the sharp Italian and the old Italian. I'll tell you what I've been doing a lot of recently. I have been doing a lot of the pork Diablo. I think it is absolutely freaking delicious. You can get it hot or cold. It's awesome, but all their Diablos are great. Big fan of the tuna as well. And let me just, the chicken cutlet sandwiches, the buffalo cutlet that they have is one of my absolute favorite sandwiches going right now. You have just a fresh chicken cutlet, buffalo sauce, fresh blue cheese, crumbles, and the blue cheese dressing for a little bit of texture. I am a huge fan of that buffalo cutlet, but no matter what you're into, like my wife, not the traditional hoagie person, maybe doesn't want an Italian. Turkey Schwartzy, turkey, Swiss cheese, coleslaw, and Russian dressing. She's all about it. No matter what you get at Primo's, you're going to get quality food. You're going to get something that you will not regret spending the money on. So please check out one of the hundreds of Primo's locations. They're freaking everywhere now. And there's a reason they're everywhere. It's because they make the absolute best hoagies. You can also order online at primohoagies.com. And while I have you, finish that big delicious sandwich. No, that's not how I want to go with this. That's not where I want to go with this. No, I want to tell you about Lucy Nicotine. A lot of our users know I have been a casual nicotine user since my days working in restaurants, because that was the only way to get breaks. I told, like, oh, how come the guy who smokes gets a break and I don't? I guess I'm going to do that. Well, hey, you don't really want to do that into your 30s. Like, oh, yeah, let me just continue smoking. This is a great idea. And I'm not saying you can use Lucy to quit smoking. Like, that's not it. But as an alternative, I think it's a pretty damn good alternative if you just need that nicotine fix. So 100% pure nicotine and always tobacco-free. Lucy isn't like every other nicotine pouch company that's owned by big tobacco. They're like kind of the mom and pop shop of pouches, which is pretty cool. You're supporting a smaller business than you would say you're buying one of these competitive products. And the pouches come in a variety of strengths from 4 milligrams all the way up to 12. Ooh, that 12. As Shane Gillis would say, it will put you on the moon. Me personally, I'm a 4 milligram guy. Just like to maybe pop one in when I'm driving, not make my car smell like smoke, but still deal with the stress of being on the road. If you drive at all and interact with people, you realize they're mostly horrible. I get really stressed when I'm driving. I like to pop in a Lucy. It isn't so bad. I like a bunch of their flavors. I highly recommend the variety pack they have on the website. 6 different flavors. I really like the mango, which was surprising. I don't like mango stuff usually. And the wintergreen and the mint as well. But check out the variety pack. They're really, really tasty, and I think you'll enjoy the buzz. So level up your nicotine routine with Lucy. Go to lucy.co/flyers and use promo code FLYERS to get 20% off your first order. Lucy offers free shipping and has a 30-day refund policy if you change your mind. That's lucy.co and use code FLYERS to get 20% off and always free shipping. And here comes the fine print. Lucy products are only for adults of legal age, and every order is age verified. Warning, this product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive chemical. All right, the final 3, Charlie. We're going to hit these final 3. Yesterday, we talked about this game, the 2004 Game 6 against Tampa. Keith Primo with the just highlight wraparound goal. To tie the game. Simone Gagne wins it in overtime. Flyers force a Game 7. Just the final home game for, there it is right there, Roenick, Leclerc, Recchi, and I throw Tony Amonte in there too, because who didn't love Tony Amonte? Just
I don't know why this is. I don't know why this is the case on our graphics, but I kind of love how we are referencing Keith Prime. It's like Optimus Prime, Keith Prime.
Oh, I'm sure that was. I'm sure that was an autocorrect issue.
I kind of love it.
Because I put all this in. It was in Google Docs, and I'm sure they just kind of.
It just seems like something where, like, if PHLY was around at this time, we would have like an Optimus Prime Keith Primo shirt that we'd be selling.
Fuck, let's do it now. Throwback shirts. Why not? But my argument with Gargano is 5 overtimes versus this game. Where do you come in? I have 5 overtimes at 4 and this at 3.
Okay.
Where do you come in on this?
I definitely would have this over the 5 overtime game personally. Again, my argument yesterday was that the 5 overtime game is a more of a national great game than a specifically Philly great game. This was just a great hockey game. Like, again, this was just a great friggin' game. Back and forth. No team ever had more than a goal lead. I will vividly remember the call. The entire call of the Primo game-tying goal, and I'll just remember Gary Thorne giving the little update right before the goal of, like, all the scoring was done in the first 2 periods. Yeah. And it's because, like, the third period, they entered the third period down a goal because Ruslan Fedotenko continued his unreal friggin' playoff run where he was just scoring every single goal imaginable. Like, this average at best player just decides to become God for 2 months. Still ticks me off. But anyway, they're down because of freaking Fedotenko, and that entire period, it's just like tension. I just remember, my hands are gripping the couch, like, oh God, is this it? But they were playing well, and they were threatening, and it gets to less than 2 minutes left, and you're thinking, like, is this it? Is it over? We talked about yesterday about the fact that, not only would it have been over for that season, you didn't know what the deal with hockey was going to be with the looming lockout, the labor strife that was going on. And then Keith Primo just literally puts the team on his back and goes around the entire net to get to the bouncing puck, ties it. And I obviously wasn't there. I was watching it on television, but everyone I talked to that watched that game in person is just like, they don't remember the Fargo Center ever being that loud.
Yeah, like I vividly remember I watched this game.
Wachovia Center at the time.
Yeah, I watched this game with my mom, like just me and her in the living room. Like I'm freaking out, and it's an epic game. And yeah, like 5-4 in overtime. Like, give me that. Give me that. Just
a great hockey. Primo scored another goal earlier in the game that was really good too. Like, it wasn't just that he was the hero at the end. He was great that entire game. And then Simon Gagne scores the game winner in overtime. Again, personal thing here. Gagne was my favorite player at the time. So when your guy scores the winner, it just makes it even better.
Thinking about like Rusty Fedotenko in this series, is he like the original former Flyer? Like, is he the first one?
Is he the one that scarred us?
Is he like the one that started this thing? Because I can't think of any like from the 90s or anything that happened. Like, I'm trying to. Like a dude who just came back and really haunted us.
And just killed the Flyers.
He might be the original former Flyer.
Was he patient zero? He might have been.
He really might have
been. The original person that convinced us that all former Flyers come back to ruin our lives.
Yeah. All right. So we talked about that a bit yesterday too. Now we get to the final 2. And this was announced today on the list for the top 25. Comes in at number 2 for us. 1987 Cup Final, Game 6. The night the Spectrum shook. I guess you can compare 3 and 2 just in terms of like the reactions to this one.
Right.
But this is obviously pre-us. But we have all heard the tales of Game 6 against Gretzky's Oilers. The all-time great NHL dynasty, really, of the 80s.
Yeah, they're going for their 3rd cup in 4 years. They had not won it the year before, but they were very much primed to, turn into a 3 and 4. And this Flyers team was good. Don't get me wrong, but my understanding is that pretty much everybody going in was like, yeah, like the Oilers are going to win this, right?
It's the Oilers against like this is well after like I think Clark is on the team in 80. I think maybe that's his last one.
Yeah.
Like
he's done.
Well, this is very much post Bullies, and it's getting into just like a completely different era. Like they are separated from those teams of 10 years prior, and even like earlier in the decade that had gone to some Stanley Cup Finals, and it's one of those games that I always say, like, I have seen this game on Comcast Sportsnet Classics several times.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what were you doing after school? Because that's what I was doing.
That's what you were doing.
Yeah, and this is just one that even if you weren't around for it, you know the legend of this game and just simply how loud the Spectrum was.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a game I obviously can't speak to. I didn't live through it, but you hear the tales. And even as people who didn't experience it live, you can't deny the legend that has grown around this game.
No, absolutely not. And that leaves us with the final game of the list, number one. Not all that hard to guess, I would bet.
Yeah.
2010 Game 7, second round against the Boston Bruins. They complete the comeback. Come back from 3-0 in the series. Simon Gagne, undefeated in that series.
That's true.
He
comes back and they win the next 4.
Yeah, he scores the winner. Another incredibly clutch moment for Simon Gagne. And if we were alive for 87, do you think that trumps this? Or is completing a Game 7 comeback in which you come back from 3-0 cancel out a Stanley Cup final game?
No, I think I think this is number one.
It's the Cup final, and it's Gretzky. But this is a thing that can't be, like, if you play that game 100 more times, that doesn't happen.
No, I think this is number one until the Flyers win a cup.
Yeah.
Because it's just the improbability of you go down 3-0 in the series, you come back. You go down 3-0 in the game, you come back. And just the sheer amount of moments in this game.
Timeout.
Like they're just, like, it's iconic. You have the Lavi timeout. You have the JVR goal. Like, the guy that everybody hates now.
The much maligned JVR.
Truly the much maligned. And that's a key goal. Like, it gets partially blocked and it somehow slips through. I've heard multiple players in that team say that if he doesn't score that goal, they don't know if the comeback happens, because instead they go into the first intermission. They're not down 3-0, they're down 3-1. And suddenly it's like, now we could do this. Like, we came back from 3-0 in the series. And now we're only down 2 goals. Like, we got 40 minutes. We got time. Briere scores an awesome wraparound goal. That was an amazing moment. Classic Danny Briere fist pump celebration. Then you've got, this is a low-key thing. Obviously, the Gagne goal is great. But the too many men on the ice penalty to give them the power play. They
had like a couple too many men in the playoffs this year. And like, just listening to people from Boston, like, why is this our fucking problem? Why is too many men constantly crushing this organization?
and then the one of my favorite moments of that game, and I went back this morning to count the seconds. The 21 seconds of Claude Giroux killing time with 2 minutes left against 3 Bruins. And this is like, Claude Giroux was never a big guy, but this was early career Claude Giroux when he really wasn't a big guy.
130 pounds.
Yeah, he was really tiny.
His helmet was too big.
And he's just outworking these Bruins like along the boards for 21 seconds. And at that point, every second mattered. We're talking about less than 2 minutes in the game. And they're up by 1 goal. They're trying to kill it off. They're on the road. And no one can get the puck off this guy. It was unreal. I think that was the moment, because that obviously comes before Giroux scores the game winner in the Cup final. That's the moment where I think Flyers fans are like, yo, we got something special with this kid.
And I will always credit one of our diehards, and I got to thank very much our diehards for joining us today. We couldn't do what we do here at ALLCITY, at PHLY, without the diehards.
Very true.
So thank you very much for joining us today. But one of our diehards, I'll never forget. People have heard me tell this story millions of times, but I was in Milwaukee for this game. They're down. We probably watched at my college house game 2 or 3 with all my buddies over, and it's like, yo, Phillies, they're wearing the blue jerseys this weekend in Milwaukee. It's 80s weekend. Let's go. It's like, how much could a flight to Milwaukee be? It's like, my one buddy Mike goes, just to throw this out there, the Friday of game 1 will be game 7. I just remember turning to him going, buddy,
there's no way.
I don't think that's going to be a problem. Fast forward a week, and there we are walking into Miller Park in Flyers gear and going into their TGI Fridays and demanding they put on a hockey game. And when they fall down 3-0, I turn to Frankie, as I always did when one team's season ends, and I say, well, go Phils. He goes, oh, no. They're down 3-0 in the series, too. We're staying till the end. And he refused to cheers me. He refused. Would not toast to the Phillies until this Flyers game was over. And they came back.
Bill,
and
you
won.
have a habit of giving up prematurely.
I guess so.
That's the theme of this top 10.
I guess that would be the case. Yeah, but I will always credit Frankie with saying he kept the belief.
He kept the
Listen,
faith.
I'm a Philadelphia sports fan. I'm not negative. I'm realistic. I'll tell you what I did keep the faith in was the Stanley Cup final of this year when I was like, well, no. They didn't come all the way back against Boston just to fucking lose. Like, this is a movie. Clearly, this is a movie. And they win in the end. No, it was like Cool Runnings, where it was like a moral victory. I guess. Yeah. All right.
Except, I mean, I don't think there was a Michael Leighton in Cool Runnings. But the Michael Leighton was the bobsled.
It was the guy.
It was the bobsled.
That's absolutely outstanding. All right. We have some honorable mentions here I wanted to get to, just games that didn't make the list I want to run through real quick. The unbeaten streak getting to 35 in 1980. Listen, sure. you know. Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
Yeah.
It's a cool thing.
It's cool. They went 25-0-10. Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. They started the season 1-1 and then didn't lose for 35 consecutive games.
Wild.
But, like, I can't tell you anything about this game. I have no idea. Maybe it was good. Maybe it wasn't.
Can you imagine checking the newspapers every morning and looking at the standings and just seeing like all these teams with normal records and then the Flyers at 26-1-10 or 26-1-11? Like the most wild record ever.
Ridiculous. 1997 Eastern Conference Final, Game 3. Lindros hat trick up against the Gretzky and Messier Rangers. I remember I had the audio of this hat trick on Napster.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
I would fucking like listen to this and like the 3 Lindros goals, and I think like Messier's trying to hook him down on the empty netter, and he just buries it anyway. Like, it's an Eric Lindros hat trick in the playoffs. I had to get it in there in some way or another,
Reasonable.
and then they win the series to go to the Stanley Cup for the first time in 10 years. Eastern Conference Final, Game 5, 2010. Mike Richards shift.
Yeah. It gets you to the Cup final.
They crushed Montreal.
Yeah,
but like I don't remember. I remember the shift.
That's
I don't remember
honestly.
that game.
I think that game is mildly similar to it's comparable to the Giroux shift. Yeah, because just because like again, maybe not the greatest game, but a truly iconic moment.
Yeah, and the 2000 Eastern Conference Final, Game 3, Bush's save.
The Bush save.
Like I had that poster forever.
Another game I'll note would be the Game 7 of the Capital Series
that
in 08.
One very much. I have
Lupul, the overtime game winner.
I was like, how do I have nothing from 2008 on here? If that was maybe not a round 1 series, but it's a Game 7 overtime. Like, maybe that could make the list over like the brawl or something if you want to just go with hockey.
You know, one game that I would say that deserves at least a thought, and I know it was a weird circumstance, but Game 6 of the Islanders series in 2020, the Oscar Lindblom returns game, and then they win in I think it was double overtime.
Was that double overtime, Phil Myers?
Was it Provy? I thought Provy scored the OT winner. Myers scored in Game 2, I believe.
That's what it was.
But I believe it was Provorov who scores the game winner in the Lindblom game. It was weird because there were no fans, and they obviously lose the series in 7, but add in the return of Lindblom and the way they win that game. They honestly got outplayed in that game, but they just kept pushing. They kept pushing, and they get the win. That one I at least believe deserves to be an honorable mention.
That definitely probably should. That one. If we didn't have such a negative, like one, it's COVID, so that sucks.
It was weird,
and 2, just like that era, and like everything after basically the outdoor game. It's like fuck those teams.
I mean, it's still it's the last playoff game the Flyers have won. Oh my god, it is. Right. But I remember there are few columns I am prouder of writing than my column after that game, and it was a long one, but it was a game that warranted that kind of treatment. I'm really proud of that article that I wrote at The Athletic on that game. But yeah, it's the last playoff game they've won.
It is.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that long ago, but there's so much blank space on top of lost in second round on Hockey Reference in 2019-20. God damn it.
Yep.
We didn't know how good we had it when they were just making the playoffs every single year.
Extreme to take something from our friends at Flyperbole. Extreme stained voice. It's been a while. It's been a while.
All right. That's it on the list, and we have 3 super chats to get to, so thank you for our super chatters. Let's hit those. First one from JH. What's the best jersey in Flyers history, and why is it the 2019 Stadium Series?
Okay, it's definitely not the 2019 Stadium Series jersey.
I will not say it's the best one in team history. I have it really high on the list.
You like it?
I love that jersey.
I did not like it.
That's it. We have somebody who, whenever I put out a, and we've talked about it before, who wants to do like Halloween jerseys and like all, because I'm all for like I wish every team had 100 jerseys like basketball. Like I think that's great. Fair. Sell as many jerseys as you can in NHL. What are you doing? Like that to me, I call it the jack-o'-lantern jersey, and I fucking love that jersey.
Fair. I would say so. I definitely would not put that as the best. I think he's mostly trolling JH here, but my favorite personally. Favorite Flyers jersey ever is the 90s white. I think that is the best.
So clean.
I think that's the best one with the piping, the old school one. But I will say that a close second for me in terms of, I would say my favorite of the non-regular jerseys was the Winter Classic jerseys with the Keystone, the orange one with the tie up. That to me is the best specialized, like one-time only type jersey they've ever had. I think that is a fantastic jersey.
Those are great. I have a Wayne Simmons one of those. I think I have a blank one too.
Which Winter Classic was that? 2012.
That was 12 at the Citizens Bank.
2012. Yeah. Love those jerseys. They're fantastic.
Yeah. I also like the. I just love those 2010 era jerseys, the orange ones that they had, and then the white ones that they wore for the Winter Classic in Boston. I think those are super clean too. Yeah, it's hard to pick a favorite, but I think I'm with you. Just like those 90s white are so clean.
Yeah, they're my favorite by far.
All right, next super chat from David Shaw. Was there ever a specific year, team/era you felt the Flyers should have kept a team, key players together, and made unnecessary changes that cost us?
I think we know what your answer is because you've said it multiple times.
Yeah, 2011. Run it back one more time.
You want to see one more year with Carter and Richards.
If those guys keep fucking up, you can still trade them.
Yeah, it's true.
And keep Bob. And don't sign Briz. All of that together, I think butterfly effects into Pronger not getting hurt, and they win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
Or they all just hate each other and the team gets blown up and you don't get value for them.
Yeah.
Either way.
I think my answer here, honestly, and it's taking it a little bit in a different direction. And again, like I want to make it clear that this is very much hindsight bias, to be sure. I would love to see an alternate history where in the summer of 2021, after that, the pandemic shortened season, if Fletcher, instead of choosing Vigneault over his players, chooses his players over Vigneault and fires AV, and keeps that bunch together and gets a new coach who can get more out of them, and maybe, just maybe, if that happens, you don't trade Ghost, you don't give away Ghost, you don't get rid of Voracek, you don't bring in Risto because like the coach fucking needed another right-handed shooting defenseman who hits and that crap, and you keep that group together. I maybe it ends badly anyway, but keeping Vigneault in retrospect was so the wrong decision because they had decided they hated him and it was just over. Maybe you bring, because I still think that team had a lot of talent. And maybe if you bring in a new coach, maybe Couturier doesn't get hurt because butterfly effect. Then maybe you don't have to trade Giroux. Then maybe you don't have to do, like, maybe Travis Konechny, it doesn't take him another year to get back to pre-pandemic Travis Konechny because he's playing under a coach that fosters his talent rather than has him play like shit for 2 years before he gets it back going. I'd love to see the alternate history of that era if it doesn't fall apart, if you make the decision that AV's run his course, we need to can him.
Even if you make the moves, don't make such bad moves.
Yeah.
Like, if you have to trade Ghost, get literally anything in return.
I mean,
get a return.
I mean, at that same summer, one Sam Reinert was traded for a similar package by the same team that traded the Flyers Risto. Maybe trade for him.
Yeah, like if you have to trade that first-round pick, does it have to be for Rasmus Ristolainen?
Maybe
it's for the guy who just scored 57 fucking goals.
That would have been cool. I don't know. Just an idea
here. Don't make every move the worst possible. Like when Cam Atkinson, who they just had to buy out because he didn't score a point for 3 months, is the best move in retrospect.
Yikes.
You fucked up.
Wasn't a great summer.
All right, and this last super chat from Corey. I'm a pretty new Flyers fan. I watched a compilation of the 2010 run recently, and it's wild to hear how many times JJ says for a case of Tasty Cakes.
Yeah, they brought that back for a few years.
Yeah.
That was an iconic part of Flyers history.
Yeah, I missed that.
Then it dropped off for a while, and there was a couple years where they tried to bring it back. But obviously, it's something that they can't just bring back unilaterally because they need Tasty Cake to be part of the promotion.
I mean, they could say it, I guess. But Tasty Cake could be like, oh, thanks for the free advertising. We're not paying you to say it.
Exactly. That was then, Corey, as a new fan, just to explain, that was an iconic part of Flyers history. That was something Gene Hart would say for years. So that was less a new thing and more something that they were bringing back because they know how much the fans dug it. And I guess they were able to come to some sort of agreement with Tasty Cake on a marketing spend for that little stretch.
Corey, if you haven't seen them and you feel like going back down that 2010 rabbit hole, the History Will Be Made commercials. Oh, so good. I still fucking cry when I watch them.
Probably the best marketing campaign the NHL has ever done in my lifetime.
I can't name a close second. Their Stanley Cup commercials are always good.
Yeah, they're usually good.
And those ones are fucking fantastic. They're 100 out of 10.
Unreal. And the fact that they were doing it the year the Flyers went on this crazy unexpected run. Just made it even better.
What if Richie didn't play like Clarkie? Oh, God damn it.
So good.
All right. And that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, you got to hit that subscribe button. Follow us right here on YouTube. Set those notifications so you never miss a live show. We'll be back tomorrow at 1 o'clock for F Around Friday. Pretty sure Kelly's going to be with us, so that'll be a good time. Follow us on Twitter at PHLY_Flyers and follow the podcast, PHLY Flyers, wherever you get those. That's it. My name's Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Until tomorrow, stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.